Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Hello, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. Myself, Nuriddeen Knight, Madonna Knight, and with us is Makita Knight and Fatima Knight. Alhamdulillah. So today we're continuing our series on rebuilding the African American Muslim family. So, alhamdulillah, we can sort of have a slow start in terms of welcoming you all and inshallah ta'ala giving you salamu alaikum. Let us know where you are from, inshallah ta'ala. As we wait for you all to come, we'll give a little intro. So, alhamdulillah, we are the hosts, Nuriddeen Night and Madonna Night. Madonna is my mom, I'm her daughter, mashallah. And today, as we mentioned, we have Makeda night and Fatima night. So, alhamdulillah, they both have businesses that are in the chat. So, Fatima night, you can read her blog. So, if you're interested in her writing, she went to Zaytun, and we'll do a proper intro in a minute, but just as you all come in. If you want to read her writings, you can go to fatimanight.com. Where alhamdulillah, she has lots of wonderful wisdom. Let me put that on the screen here. And also, you can check out her business, thesoufshop.com. Assalamu alaikum to everyone. Alhamdulillah, we see you all coming in slowly but surely, mashallah. So the Souf shop is really amazing. And also her blog is really cool there, and her Instagram, where she talks about going to Morocco and sourcing materials from there for rugs, pillows, and other, alhamdulillah, interior decorations that you can own. So, inshallah ta'ala, if you want to check out her website, that is thesoufshop.com. Inshallah, we will have Makita's website up in a moment. The name of her website is The Path to Presence, as well as plan-baraka.com. So, alhamdulillah, both wonderful businesses as well. So, The Path to Presence is where she does classes, courses, coaching, alhamdulillah. And you really want to sign up for her newsletter. That's where you'll keep up and know what she's doing at any given moment, what she's offering. And she also has plan-baraka.com, where you can get her planners. And she has a really great Ramadan planner, inshallah ta'ala, that you should check out. So, again, while we're sort of welcoming you all in, Mom, if you want to introduce himself. So today is about interracial marriage and Black women. So if you want to introduce anything, Mom, and Makita, Fatima, if you just want to start out with introductions or even talking a bit more about either yourself, your business, please do, inshallah.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum everyone, and welcome back to our 7-part series. And today, of course, as Nur said, this will be about interracial marriages and Black Muslim women. We, of course, have Makeda Knight. So Makeda is the big sister. So she will get the honors of introducing herself and the baby of the family. I know they're saying, Mom, why did you have to introduce us like this? The baby of the family is Fatima Knight, and she will introduce herself accordingly. So for Team Makeda Knight, welcome. Assalamu alaikum. Please introduce yourself.
Walaikum salam. Alhamdulillah. Once again, thank you, Mommy and Nuriddeen, for inviting me to be a part of this discussion, and wonderful to be here with my sister, Fatima. Alhamdulillah. Always a pleasure to be in you guys' company. I am the eldest of the Knight sisters, so the eldest of 6, and I'm a wife and a mother, and I homeschool. I do have a planner business. So, as Nuriddeen mentioned, with the Islamic planners, one for the year and one for the month of Ramadan specifically. I also do coaching. So, what I like to call spiritual development coaching, mostly for Muslim women, but it is open to whoever is interested. And aside for my work with my own family in my home, in my coaching business, I am just really interested in coaching people to develop themselves spiritually, to center their spirituality, their relationship with Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, and really be active on working on that development.
Okay, so Makita, I'm sorry, Keita, you
As
paused for a minute. Just wanted to
a
explain to folks that you are coming to us
foundation
from,
and force
Makita's coming to us from Qatar, so she might be having
success,
some
inshallah, in this. Yeah,
technical.
can you guys? I hope you all can hear me. Yeah, I'm in
Yeah,
Qatar. I am. Am I muted? No, I'm in Qatar. I am a bit tired. It is 1 in the morning, but inshallah, I hope that you all can hear me and that there aren't too many technical difficulties on my end. My kids are sleeping, so I'm trying to be, you know, not wake them
thank
up,
you.
basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Makita. All right, the lovely Fatima. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Fatima. Like mom said, I am the youngest of the Night Sisters. I'm a wife, a mom of three. Like Nuriddeen mentioned, I have a blog where I write on Islam and living. And I also have this started business with my husband, where we create and source Moroccan home goods. That's called the Souf Shop. Souf means wool in Arabic. I am aiming to be a student of Islamic studies, inshallah. I'll soon be, inshallah, entering a PhD program in Islamic studies. And yeah, that's all the main things that are relevant to strangers.
Mashallah. Alhamdulillah, very, very valuable introductions. And inshallah, we really hope that you all will check out their businesses, their websites, and even just signing up for the newsletter. Alhamdulillah, you'll get lots of wisdoms, lots of gems to your inbox, inshallah ta'ala. So we are talking today about interracial marriage and Black women. To get started, inshallah ta'ala, we would love for you all in the comments to tell us what comes to mind for you when you think about Black Muslim women and interracial marriage. Do you have positive thoughts about that? Positive associations, negative associations? Are there questions that you have about the process, about the difficulties, about the ease? One of the reasons that as you all know, then this is sort of a continuation of part of the African American Islamic Summit, where there was discussion about family, and so we wanted to continue that conversation. And one of the conversations was about polygamy and sort of that being presented as a solution. And so we thought, it would be good to also talk about interracial marriage because that can kind of also be shown or talked about as a solution, quote unquote. And we'll get into more of what does that mean, what solution to what's the problem, right? But we thought, let's actually lead with interracial marriage because we didn't feel like that discussion was talked about enough. And so that's why we are here today to kind of start with that in terms of quote unquote solutions to Black women and marriage in particular. So, inshallah, we would love to hear your thoughts, positive, negative. What do you want to learn about the process, the difficulties? And we look forward to getting those comments and questions. So, I guess to start, I would love to start with that in terms of before we get to sort of the meat of the questions that we're going to discuss. When you hear this idea of interracial marriage is a solution for Black women, what does that mean to you, right? Like, how can we kind of unpack that statement? What sentiments come to mind for you? So I'll start with Kita. I'll start with Makita.
Okay, so yeah, so the interracial marriage is being a solution for Black women. Black Muslim women. I don't know. I guess like my sort of instinctual answer or response is that I'm not quite sure what that means, right? So like sort of like what you alluded to before, a solution to what? What exactly is the problem per se, if there is a problem? If we're talking about a problem of people um, not feeling like they can find suitable mates, or they feel like there aren't enough they're not finding a match in their like community, perhaps they're part of a predominantly Black or all Black community, and for whatever reason they're not able to find a suitable match in that community. um, then yeah, interracial marriage could be a quote unquote solution, in the sense that whatever qualities are most important to you in a mate, um, you should look for them. If you don't find them like in your immediate surroundings, and if they're that important to you, then you should look for them elsewhere, whatever those qualities may be. So yeah, I don't know if that is enough of an answer. Like I said, I guess it depends on what exactly is the problem per se. But if it's about finding someone who matches you, um, spiritually, intellectually, economically, then yeah, I think looking for that wherever you are, or not like limiting your pool, let's say, of people. Yeah, then I get that. Mhm.
Yeah, I think one of the things is that based on the fact that statistically speaking, taken away from the summit that we had about a month or so ago, we realized that there is a crisis in our community with, of course, a lot of single Black Muslim women and brothers, but more so women, not having a potential pool of brothers to marry. And that would then lead us to then ask the question, should we then, as many Black women outside of Islam, but includes Islam since we're part of that, some part of that culture, why is it that our Black women, and particularly Muslim women, continue to be particularly committed to marrying within the race when for them, as you said, the potential pool is not there in terms of what they're looking for, right? And so you will have sisters who are in their late 30s, 40s, and not finding suitable mates, but insist on marrying a brother from within the community instead of exploring other options, right? So that's where the interracial um, conversation now comes in. Should you continue to, quote unquote, stifle yourself into thinking that I should only marry a Black Muslim man in order for me to, fulfill my part of my deen?
Mhm.
So, Fatima, if you can chime into that question, what are your perspective on that?
Yeah, I wonder because I'm not sure that there's that much of a disparity between Black women marrying outside of the race and Black men marrying outside of the race. I think Nuriddeen might have better statistics and know-how on that particular issue. I am pretty sure that Black men do it more than Black women, but I'm not sure that the disparity is all that great. But I would say, in terms of interracial marriage being a solution, I take issue with it in a sense because I feel like it should just be normal. I feel like interracial marriage should be normal. Not saying that it should necessarily be promoted, but that it should be as normal as choosing to marry someone within your own race. That it shouldn't be that someone has the mindset that they can only marry within their race, and then only when they've sort of checked out and given up all hope that they should look outside of their race. That doesn't sound particularly healthy to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see it as a solution, only because I feel like it should be normalized and it should be more acceptable, and people should be more accepting of it, and people should allow themselves um, to think about all of their possibilities when they're looking to get married.
Mm-hmm. But I
Yeah,
think
I completely agree with you. Yeah, just want to say that.
you,
So I do want to chime in with the data. I hate the name of this book, but it's a very valuable book in talking about Black marriage and why is it declining, or at least giving some data, and the author giving his own opinion on why he believes that the marriage rates are declining in the Black community. But just in terms of the interracial stats, the name of the book is Marriage for White People, which is why I hate the title. But in the book that he says that estimates are that more than 1 out of 5 Black men marry interracially, whereas fewer than 1 out of 10 Black women do.
Okay.
So, of course, this is Black people in general. I think in a lot of ways, the Black Muslim community probably mirrors the larger Black community, but in some ways we don't. So, Allahu Alam, I think that probably it happens more. I think there are just more interracial marriages in the Black community than, in the Muslim community than outside of it. But that would just be sort of my subjective take. Mom, were you gonna chime in there?
no, I think the question was answered. So I'm going to ask another question. The other question would be, how do we explore outside the community to find good mates? How would you suggest going about doing that?
Yeah, so I'll say that it kind of goes with Timi's response, right? Which is that I don't believe anybody should be like looking like I'm on a mission to marry someone from another race, like that would just be weird. I think that you should be when it comes time and you feel like you want to get married, you should have your heart inclined that way. You should be making that way, and you also should be expanding your circle and finding circles of people that mirror the qualities that are important to you. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so if you are very like educationally inclined, let's say, right? You like to study, you like, you're really into seeking knowledge, then you should associate yourself, like you should be in that circle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you should look within that circle. If you are very like spiritually inclined and you like, to make the zikr and, sing nasheeds and things like that, then you should also look within that circle, within the community. I think that when it comes to marriage, in a sense, you should never have it in your mind that I'm going to go outside of my community to get married, per se, right? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
more so your community, right? Who is a part of your community? And those are people with whom you share values, right? And you will more than likely find a mate amongst the people that you share values with, right? And so now it's just a matter of, if you share values with like this diverse, let's say ethnically or racially diverse community of people, but for some reason in your head you're like, oh no, I can only choose from, or I can only entertain from among the Black people among this group, well, then I think it's just a strange hierarchy for me personally. I mean, if it's that you're only attracted to people with certain features, a certain color, fine. Everyone is allowed their like physical, personal preference. But if it's just about some sort of like allegiance to your race, I don't believe that's a good way to go about things. So if it's about like finding, like I said, I don't think it should be about, oh, I want to marry someone who's not a part of my race. I don't think. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's just as problematic as, oh, I will only marry someone from my race. That one is probably I actually even more problematic, kind of hunting only for someone that's outside of your race. I think people should be looking for a mate that shares their values, you know.
Mhm.
You should be looking for a mate with whom the things that are of like primary importance to you are also primary importance to them, you know. And that for me should be your top criteria for the person that you want to marry. And I feel like as Muslims, to to put race personally anyway at like, you know, the top like checkpoint, like, oh, they have to be Muslim, then they need to be my same race. Personally, that's not how I have ever gone about anything. I
Mhm.
wouldn't advise anyone else to do
Mhm.
that. Find the circles of people with whom you share values, and then don't limit yourself based on like something arbitrary like race. That's what I would say.
Yeah, and it seems to be that, particularly in the Black community, the Black Muslim community, our statistics are higher, particularly with Black Muslim women, who this crisis seems to be affecting more so, because there are sisters who are looking to get married, and they, according to some of the statistics, in terms of just looking at the numbers and also in having conversations with women, the pool of qualified brothers are not there. Maybe they're not looking hard enough. Maybe they're not in the right circle. But as you said, those are some good points in terms of what it is you are you looking for and what circle are you in, because like anything else, whether it's a class system, right, an economic system, there is a pool, whether we like it or not, that people will tend to put themselves into in order to get what it is that they're looking for. So Fatima, do you think that there's any add-on to what Makita just said, or is there anything you would like to contribute to that?
No, I think I'd just reiterate that, you know, it's important to put yourself in places where your interests and your values are on display, and that hopefully in those settings you'll find people, you know, you'll find your pool of people to hopefully find your person in. I think that's just sort of general advice, right, for people who are looking to get married anyway, is that,
Mhm.
to a certain extent, maybe for some people it feels like putting themselves out there, but to another extent it's just kind of like making yourself present in the spaces where you would want to be anyway,
Mhm.
because those spaces align with your interests and your values, and going from there. I mean, I think in general, lots of people find their mate in college or at work, or just, in places where they have shared interests. Um, and so again, if you're only sort of myopically looking for people of your own race, then, you won't see the other people who are right there doing the same things and engaged in the same things that are of value to you.
Mhm. Okay, go ahead, Nur.
Yeah, so I wanted to actually maybe dig a bit deeper on that, because you mentioned, Kita, that you didn't think it was a good idea to stick to your race. And I know I've seen, and you can talk about if you've seen the attitude within the Black community, among Black women specifically. The topic is Black women and interracial marriage. As we mentioned a moment ago, then statistically, Black men do marry out twice as much. So actually, just to pull a few things together. So um, there seems to be an issue in the Black community of Black women. Not saying there's not an issue with Black men, but we happen to be focusing on Black women for this part of the series, where they're having an issue finding mates, right? So you mentioned that you didn't think it was a good idea to just look inside your race. And I'm wondering if you've seen this attitude of people who are only committed to marrying within their race. And then what do you see as the issue there? When you say that's an issue, are you saying it's an issue because of the lack of options, or is there another angle you're coming from with seeing just sticking to your race as your potential marriage pool?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think it's an issue because of lack of options per se. The reason why I think it's an issue is because I think as Muslims, our criteria for getting married, our hierarchy of what is most important, I don't believe the race should be at the top of that list. You know, I think, unless, like I said, unless it's like, hey, I'm only attracted to, dark skinned men, of a certain height or whatever, then sure, great, because you need to be attracted to your mate, to the person that you're going to marry. So if it's a matter of physical attraction and you just like really have a type, like some people really, really have a type, then alhamdulillah, that's fine. My issue, for lack of a better word, is that marriage is half of our deen. Marriage is a very important part of our lives, spiritually, in every way. Raising children, building a community. This is something that is so important that the values that you're looking for in a mate, like the actual values of this man that you're going to marry, have to be more important than his race. That's my feeling, you know so I'm saying, so to sort of like put race like right under religion, to me, that just feels a bit bizarre, especially we're in a situation in the West where divorce rate is so high. People are really having difficult times keeping marriages together. It's a very challenging time for relationships, right? And so therefore, the actual qualities that you're looking for in a husband, someone who is committed to the deen, loves Allah, loves his prophet, someone who understands his responsibilities as a husband, as a leader, someone who wants to be a father, all of these like qualities, these things, in my opinion, should all take precedence over race. Right? It shouldn't be like first he has to be Muslim, then he has to be Black. For me personally, I don't see why in this day and age, when it's so difficult, even just to maintain a marriage, even with two people who seem perfectly compatible, why you would put this sort of arbitrary thing like at the top of the list.
Yeah, and I would add to that. I think people can do whatever they want to do. I mean, people have deal breakers of all sorts, right? It could be race. Some people have a deal breaker based off of someone's height, right? Or how much money they make. People can choose to have their deal breakers, live life. But I think when it comes to the race thing and choosing to stick to one race, it bothers me in the sense that I would wonder if there is a hidden prejudice towards other races inherent in that. Just like if an Arab told me that they would only ever marry an Arab, I would have some question marks. Now, they might be able to dispel that for me and have very specific reasons why it's like, no, well, see, because I want to move back to my country and they'll need to speak Arabic. And, you could have, I think, very legitimate reasons for wanting to stick within your own race that are not disparaging to other races. But it could also be very possible that part of you wanting to stick within your own race or ethnicity has to do with prejudices that you might hold towards other groups. So alarm bells would go off for me hearing that. And I think a lot of Black people would agree that if they heard that from another group, it might rub them the wrong way. And we're not exempt from that either. So, but again, people can do what they want to do. I just think it is important to, when you have those sorts of quote unquote deal breakers, to examine where they're coming from. Is it just simply a preference, which we're all allowed to have? Or is there something maybe that you need to examine and reflect on that is not healthy for you?
Good point.
Yeah,
Good point.
So I just wanted to add too that I think sometimes when you hear that type of commentary from people, like you said about examine where it's coming from. Sometimes people have very strange, deep rooted feelings of otherness about people from other races, as though people from other race, this person's from another race, they're going to be so different from me. Why? It's just a man. Like, they're not going to be that fundamentally different
Mhm.
from, a man of your own race. I think we've like kind of internalized very strange sort of otherings of people, oh, this person would never understand me. Why not? Like, you're a person, you can understand people. You can get along with people, you can learn about people. So there's a kind of weird thing that happens, I think, when people are, and like you said, Timmy, hey, if that's your strong preference, go ahead. Like, that's within your right. Um, but it is worthwhile to kind of examine where that's coming from. Some sort of idea that no one else could love you, you couldn't understand them, they could never understand you. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say that has happened. So what would we say would be some of the unique challenges of an interracial marriage or marriages? Now, just for transparency to the audience, you two are married. You have an interracial marriage, right? And you've been married for some time. So do you believe that there are any other challenges outside what you would have thought, you know, you would experience marrying someone within your ethnic group, your racial group, or is there or isn't there?
Well, I'll say one thing that I find is kind of funny, and I don't know if Timmy would agree too, is that because there is this sort of even subconscious othering, then if you're in an interracial marriage, you might think that whatever differences there are between you and your husband, whatever disagreements, oh, it's just because he's from this race and I'm from another race, so it's kind of easy to trump any differences, any disagreements, any kind of not seeing things the same way as like, oh, it's because, I'm black and he's white, or it's because, but I think over time you realize that's silly, that it's just silly. And in a sense, you can realize, okay, well, when you marry someone, you just have to get to know the person. I mean, like, that's just it. You have to get to know the person. You're going to be different. You were raised differently. Yes, this person's, their experiences might differ quite a bit from yours based on their race, based on their culture and how they grew up and whatever. But I don't know. For me, I would say that some of that one possibly unique challenge is seeing all of your differences as having to do with the fact that you're from a different race, and just getting to know the person. Yeah, getting to know them. They're a different person than you. You don't have to trump everything up to like it's because we're not of the same race.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say I would totally agree with that. I think there is a temptation to do that. And, I think a lot of times what's really happening is just that one person is a woman and the other person is a man. And there are, it's just sort of inherent differences in the way that men and women are, and so many similarities across men of different races, and so many similarities across women of different races. Of course, racial difference, that's, that does exist. I think maybe pointing out cultural differences, I think cultural differences are a lot more significant than racial differences because, how many races are there even, like, technically speaking? What, like, I don't know, 10? Like, there are these massive groups that, have this, facade of encapsulating some sort of homogenous group of people, and it's just completely untrue. And so, you know, I think a Black person from Brooklyn, New York might have a lot of differences with a Black person from, you know, the Deep South. They might have a lot in common, but they might have a lot different that could be a source of conflict. And maybe that, you know, that Black person from Brooklyn might get along better with a Latino from Brooklyn because they have a lot culturally similar. Or maybe they wouldn't get along better, but maybe they would just have a lot in common. And so, you know, I think we use these racial designations, but they're really broad and they really don't speak to the diversity within each racial group. And the way that so many other things contribute to how a person is, like, you know, where did they, and we're just talking about the states, right? In one sense, where did they grow up in the states? Did they grow up in the city? Did they grow up in a rural area? Did they go to a public school or a private school? What kind of music did they listen to? I mean, this stuff, you know, it falls across all of these different races and ethnicities. I would say for me, because my husband is half Moroccan, I think it would be a language barrier, not with him, but with his family, right? So for us, because we have that element of language, which of course not everyone is going to have in an interracial marriage. But for us, that's something where I'm, you know, regularly thinking about, okay, I want to make sure that my kids can speak and understand this language, because I want that when they go to see their relatives in Morocco, that they can understand and can be understood, so that they don't feel left out or alienated or like they don't really belong. So, you know, for us in our interracial marriage, that's something that I think about a lot, but that's specifically because there's a language difference, right? And I think, you know, I think when it comes to interracial marriages, there could be there's so many ways in which it breaks down. And especially when you talk about kids, like, you know, how are those kids going to identify? How are they going to identify in relation to which parent they look most like? How are they going to identify in terms of whose side of the family they grow up with? You know, there's so many ways in which it can break down. So yeah, I don't think there's just one or two ways in which there could be a challenge. But challenges do exist. You know, I don't think there's any point denying that, but I don't think they're as big as people make them out to be. I would say there's probably maybe a couple of times where a disagreement that I had with my spouse was based off of culture, like you know, the 90% of those disagreements have to do with the same things that every other married couple disagrees about.
Yeah, I sort of it sort of like brings me back to our first topic in our series, where the title was marriage for the sake of Allah, right? I believe that was our first topic right now. And it sort of brings me back to that in all that's being said, that at the end of the day, there is no restriction on marriage to any other race in Islam. However, I think a lot of times we do impose these restrictions on ourselves, not getting to know each other, first of all, and also not preparing ourselves properly for marriage, even within our own community. So when you do run up with these issues of availability, it is because many times people are not really prepared for marriage in the first place. And then in the second place, we've also talked about Muslim women having a higher level of education in many cases, and their expectations are different. And of course, they're vetting and looking for certain standards, as was said before. Maybe they're not finding that in their community, right? So one of the things that I've heard us talk about a lot, and of course the imams have talked about this on the Imams Roundtable as well, is brothers preparing themselves for marriage, both spiritually, financially, particularly financially, because that's one of the things that women in particular look for. Not to say that men don't look for it, but women like stability, right? Women like to be led with someone and feeling comfortable that, this brother can lead, they're prepared, both spiritually and in their deed, but financially as well. And they're looking for all of the requirements that they would look for first within their community. And then, lack of that, of course, they have a right to marry whomever they want outside of their race and ethnicity. So there's no prohibition against that. So again, I think sometimes we do have to look at ourselves to see what it is we're not doing or how we're not preparing in order to meet these challenges. So, Nur, you have a question?
Yeah, so inshallah, before we continue, so alhamdulillah, thank you all for the comments. Very fascinating, and you're really adding to our discussion. We're gonna come back and read through them and respond to them, inshallah. We do ask that you like this video, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube. Inshallah, please take a moment to like the video. We would really appreciate it. And also share it, inshallah ta'ala. Also, don't forget to donate to Masjid Muhammad, and their cash app is $Masjid Muhammad AC, all lowercase. So inshallah ta'ala, if you could do both of those things, we would really, really appreciate it. Again, the topic for today, for those of you who more recently came in, is interracial marriage and the Black Muslim woman. So we are focusing specifically on Black Muslim women. I'm just going to repeat myself because earlier we mentioned it, but I know a lot of you recently came in, that this entire series is a tie-in, an extension to a part of the African American Islamic Summit that dealt with the family. The entire series is called Rebuilding the Black Muslim Family. And so we want to look at different aspects. And today we're looking at Black Muslim women and interracial marriage. So we are going to go to the comments fully in a bit. So please keep writing your comments and we will get to them. But there was one that I saw maybe 2 or 3 times that I wanted to ask you all about, that you kind of addressed, but maybe if we could sort of revisit it a little bit more. And again, please like the video on Facebook or YouTube. We would greatly appreciate it. So that is the question of culture. Culture and race, and people look at it the same. I saw one comment say that race sort of is culture in America, like your race sort of defines your culture. So when it comes to marrying and having the similarity of culture is almost a starting point of what marriage looks like, what are our roles, how do you raise children. We get a lot of that from culture, right? So I guess the idea is that you marry someone from the same culture and you have that shared. So it feels like you all are saying perhaps that isn't necessarily true, that you don't necessarily have a shared culture purely because of a shared race. Do you think that assumption is completely not true? Or is it just that you feel that that is not what you have found? You haven't necessarily seen huge differences based on culture or race itself?
I think it is true that culture, not necessarily race, but there is overlap. I think it is true that people from the same culture do share certain things in common, right? Do have the same, like, maybe the same type of eating habits, maybe what they think is acceptable in terms of raising children. Maybe they have the same, like, cleanliness habits. Like, it is true, I remember joking with some friends, and this is not with my husband in particular, but joking with some friends. I had another friend living here in Qatar who's Puerto Rican. She's from America. And then we had some other friends. They were from various other places. I think some Lebanese, some Sudanese, different places. And she and I were joking about house clothes and street clothes, right? And she's Puerto Rican, I'm West Indian background. And so we both know what we're talking about. Like, you come home, take your street clothes off, and put on some house clothes, right? And we're kind of joking about it. Not everyone understands what that even is. That's not a thing for everyone. But for us, I don't know, like I said, maybe it's a Caribbean thing. I don't know. But so that's like an example, right? It is definitely true that people from a similar culture will sort of take some things for granted, right? That it's the same. So that could definitely be an issue in an interracial marriage. And I think, like Timi mentioned earlier, when it comes to raising children, right? So in some cultures, very heavy on disciplining children from a young age, right? And other cultures, they're like, let the kids run free. And so that, of course, yeah, that can be an issue. However, what I would say is that what I would say is that um but you just have to communicate. You know what I'm saying? Like, so in a sense, right? Because you could marry someone from the same culture, and it could be like, yeah, well, when I grew up, you get spanked, right? Like somebody asks, "Oh, go get the belt," but maybe your spouse is like, "Yeah, I don't like that." I'm not. So just because you're from the same culture, you grew up in a similar way, doesn't mean that now as adults, people who are married, raising their own families, having to make your own decisions, it doesn't mean that you are necessarily going to see eye to eye on everything. And so I think for me, it kind of goes back to what we talked about, like in terms of intrinsic issues, quote unquote, in an interracial marriage. And I think, yeah, it can be easy to sort of, like means that it can be tempting to just sort of relegate any difference into being a difference that's because of race or even culture. And some might very well be because of culture. Like some cultures, the relationship between the daughter-in-law and the mother-in-law is very set. This is what daughter-in-laws do, this is what is expected. Okay. And if you're in an interracial marriage, there's just going to have to be communication. There's just going to have to be communication, and there's just going to have to be deciding between the two people, like, okay, well, this is our family that we're raising together, and how do we want to do things? And I think in that sense, it's not necessarily so different than marrying someone from your same culture. You still will have to make decisions when the two of you don't see eye to eye, whether it's because you were raised differently. Just because you're from the same culture doesn't mean that what went on in your personal house was exactly the same. So you're going to have to talk and communicate and decide, well, this is our family, and how do we want to do things? And there will be cultural exchange. And I think also not making assumptions. I mean, like a funny example I could think of, like for me growing up, we're West Indian background. You get meat, you wash your meat always. There's no such thing as like getting meat and then just cooking meat. That for us is disgusting. We wouldn't do that, right? But my husband, he didn't grow up like that. That's not the way that he grew up. And so, okay, that's something that, learned over time. And now it's exchange. And I picked up on, which maybe is not necessarily race, but also like culture. Like he said, how did you grow up? He grew up in the woods. And so for me, when the kids were young and we take them out in the woods, and he'd be like, "Oh, look, this is a blackberry," and he's picking it off the bush and eating it, and I'm like, "What are you doing? It could be poisonous." But he knows what he's doing. And so I need to chill, right? And like and like let myself be open to that, and let my children be open to, like, okay, well, your dad grew up in the woods, and he knows about these type of things that I don't know about growing up in Flatbush, Brooklyn, you know. And again, and even those things, they're not specifically racial. A lot of it is just where you grew up. What was your family like? Did you grow up in the country or the city? So yeah, I forgot even what was the original question, but
No, but I love the way you answered it because, and to sort of tie into that and get your perspective as well, Fatima, that we can look at the issues in interracial marriage that some people fear, but it looks like a lot of the things you're pointing to are opportunities to grow and to learn from someone with a distinctly different culture. So, can you sort of speak to that, Fatima?
Yeah, I think that's so true. I mean, Allah says that He created us from, He created us into these peoples and tribes so that we could get to know one another, right? It's for ta'arafu, like He says, to know one another, which means that He didn't create us different so that we could be separate, right? He created us different so that we could actually exchange knowledge, exchange experiences, learn from each other in all sorts of ways. And, just like if you have a friendship with someone of another race, and you might learn just some really fun, interesting, sometimes strange, things about them. It's no different in a marriage, and it could be more enriching, right? Because you get this chance to really delve into another person's culture, into another um, way of living, and you're introduced to things that you weren't introduced to before, or you're willing to try things that you didn't before. Like, one really sort of simple example is I had never tried proper sushi before because I thought the idea of uncooked fish was just so insane, right? And it just so happens now my husband is Moroccan, he's not Japanese, but for whatever reason, he grew up eating a lot of that kind of food. And so because he was eating it a lot and I would constantly order something else, eventually I was like, let me try this thing that he seems to really love. And then I tried it and I was like, oh, this is actually really yummy and doesn't taste weird at all and is totally safe. So it's a simple example, but things like that happen a lot when you're married to someone of a different culture or of a different race. But I would add, to overlap with Kita's point, it doesn't have to be that happens only when you're married to someone of a different race. That can happen if you're married to someone who, you grew up in the city and they grew up in the country or the suburbs.
Mhm.
And so they have experiences doing certain things. Maybe they have experience gardening and you never had a garden because you grew up, in an apartment building, and they can introduce you to that. There's nothing racially specific about that, right? So that can happen with or without the race or culture difference.
Mhm.
It might happen more because you have a cultural difference, but you can be pleasantly delighted by learning these new things. And I think, personally speaking, because I have married someone who, comes from a place where Islam has been for a very long time, that's been very enriching for me because I can delve into that culture in a way that I probably wouldn't otherwise be able to, um, had I not married someone from that place. And yeah, as a Muslim, that's been really enriching and great to get to have those experiences. So for sure, I think when we think about these racial or ethnic differences, we shouldn't just think about the potential obstacles, but also the potential opportunities. And like I said, Allah says He created us into different people so that we could actually know each other. And there are so many different ways of growing up and living this human experience, and getting to know how other people have done it can be a very enriching thing and worth exploring. Just like people have no issue with the idea that outside of marriage, people have no issue with it when it comes to building friendships, no issues with it when it comes to travel or reading books about other places. For some reason, when it comes to marriage, it gets to be a little bit of a sticky topic for some people. but it's the same idea that you can learn about how other people live their life, and it might actually enhance the way that you live yours.
Yeah, and I think also, and you may have answered this before, but just think of it in a different way. My question would also be, is there a feeling of guilt when marrying outside the community? Is this unique to African Americans, Black women in particular?
You know, I will say something funny. Hold on. I will say that when the whole like hashtag Black love started trending, I did feel a little bit jealous. I was like, oh no, am I not a part of hashtag Black love? It's like, I'm Black and I love someone, but I don't know. Like, I posted a picture of me and my husband and put hashtag Black love. I don't know if that would have gotten a positive response that other people get.
So are you saying you felt left out?
I felt left out for sure. I was like, oh, this sounds really sweet and nice, and people posting all of their cute Black love stories. And I was like, oh, I don't have a Black love story. I don't know. So I felt left out. Guilty, no. I mean, maybe guilt has been a passing thought at some point, but it's kind of like guilty to who exactly? Yeah. He said half Black love. Black love 0.5.
Yeah, Imam Naive is one of the jokesters at the Muslim table.
No, it's funny.
I'm sure.
Yeah, but it's like guilty to who?
We are the original people, by the way, according to history, so we don't have a problem with that. So you're always included, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Never missed out.
Yeah. I'm sure on social media I'm not included in that.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know about that, Mom, but okay.
Yeah. I will not be posting that photo or that hashtag. But yeah, I don't think I've ever felt guilty. I mean, guilty to who exactly? I mean, there's no. It's not as if, because I didn't intentionally seek to marry someone outside of my race. Like, I wasn't pursuing this idea of like, I don't want to marry a Black man. You know, I don't feel like I have anything to feel guilty about. If I was like intentionally aversive to Black men, then yeah, in hindsight, I would say, oh, that was a strange thing for me to do, and I might feel guilty about having had that emotion, but that certainly is not my case. So I don't feel guilty, and I think people have this idea that like, oh, well, if you marry outside of the race, then you're not like committed to Black people as a group. But no, I don't think that's real. I don't think, you know, I don't become any less Black because of who I marry, nor do I become more Black by marrying another Black person. And I think there's a false idea that like, I mean, it's like less committed how? Because it's one thing if maybe my whole identity was Blackness, right? If my whole identity was Blackness, if my like mission in life only had to do with Black people, then yeah, it would be very odd for me to not marry another Black person. That would be very strange. But the idea that, I don't know, that like I'm no longer going to care about the Black community because I married someone outside of the race is of course very odd, and it sort of makes this assumption that like all Black people are like warriors for the Black community, like constantly out there doing activism and like putting their lives on the line to further the cause. It's like, no, I don't. That's just blatantly false. Most Black people are just being Black, you know, in their lives. And alhamdulillah, they, you know, care about their community and they support where they can. And they might have a cause or two that, you know, gets them riled up. But most Black people, their life's mission is not advancing the Black cause. So this idea that somehow marrying outside of the race is like you're giving up some activist mantle, when in fact you probably were never carrying an activist mantle, I think it's just misguided.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting point. Interesting
Yeah,
point. Go ahead, Keita. You
I was
wanted to
gonna
say
say,
something?
yeah, yeah, no, I love everything that Timmy said. Oh, Fatima, that Fatima said. Yes, I feel like, yeah, guilty to who and for what, like I was never rejecting black men, and I was never on like a mission to marry a man that wasn't black. It just so happened that the man that I married, that alhamdulillah, he that he this is the man that Allah brought into my life, and happened that he's not black, but I wasn't out seeking to marry someone outside of the black community. And I'll just say too, also to Timi's point, um, being black, it's just a fact of who I am. It's not my only identity. And I would say personally, it's not even my primary identity. I really do primarily think of myself as a Muslim first. That doesn't deny my blackness, but it means that like that's always going to be, inshallah, the chief way that I connect with people, and when I think about my community, um I wouldn't say like I didn't marry outside of my community, I married outside of my racial identity, but the person that I married, alhamdulillah, is very much in line with the values and the things that I hold important in my life, right? And so I think part of it maybe has to do with how you associate or how you define community in the first place. Because yeah, I honestly think that it would be strange for anyone to like purposefully marry outside of their community, however you define that community as being, because like one would assume, or I would assume, that the people you associate with are the people that you like, are the people that you want to be like, are the people who share your values. So of course it would be weird to skip over all these people that share your values to marry someone who perhaps doesn't share your values. So um yes, I think marrying someone who's not doesn't share your race is not the same as marrying someone who doesn't share your values, right? So long as you're marrying someone who shares the important values that you have, then yeah, you're not like going out of your way looking for someone of another race. So yeah, there's no guilt. I will say that I've been living outside of America for what, 13 years now, so I will say that when there's a lot of like racially charged things happening in America, I wouldn't say that I feel guilt, but I would say that some of those things can be difficult, or I wouldn't even say difficult, but yeah, I would say initially, right, like over the 13 years, it can be a challenge, right? Because to talk to my husband, who's white, about some of the racial, like, America seems like every summer, like some racial thing just like flares up, Um, I literally just stopped watching the news for a while because it was just completely depressing racial thing here in America, and then the Palestinian, like it was just like overload. But so I can say that yeah, those have been challenging things sometimes, when they're specifically racially motivated violence or incidents that happen. It is interesting to speak to my husband, who is not black, about these things, right? um yeah, but in terms of guilt, I don't owe, any like I don't owe random black man X anything, and I wasn't rejecting black men. I just, alhamdulillah, Allah wrote for me to marry the man that I married, and he happened to not be black.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. So again, this is specifically for women, but as we mentioned earlier in our session, that uh, it is an option. It's like when we talk about polygamy and people say, is polygamy should be the solution to all our problems? No, because everyone is not down with polygamy. So it'd be the same thing with, everyone is not down with marrying someone outside of their race and or ethnicity. And as you said correctly, even if you grew up with someone on the same block, culturally speaking, you will have differences too. So this whole idea of people thinking that they can't work through their differences if they so choose to marry someone, say, from Africa, a different ethnicity, right? You're going to have the same issues in terms of communicating and getting to know each other. If you are marrying someone of an entirely different race, it certainly is an opportunity for you to learn from each other. But ultimately, right, we were informed that we should, right, get to know each other. And I think it's a beautiful thing when we can get to know each other, but in life, people do have to have options. So for those of us who would like to say that, yes, you should marry within your race, within your culture, where does it say that in Islam? And ultimately, it's about Islam, right? To expanding and growing Islam any which way you can. And then behind that, of course, is the person happy with their choice? Okay. And if they can find comfort in that, and if they can find the fact that they can work within that culture, then fine. We know that there are problems in many cases where if you're marrying a different culture or even a different race, there are problems, like normal problems that you would have if you were married in the same person of the same race. So we're just speaking about another option outside of our immediate group that says, hey, sisters, do not limit yourself, do not restrict yourself to saying, oh, I'm looking for a good brother, and the only good brother that you're looking at is that he's in the masjid, up the block that you've been going to for the last 15 or 20 years, and you're not exploring other areas to see where there is a potential brother or getting to know another group of people. There may be a potential person there that you might be interested in, talking to, of course, following the proper guidelines. And it is something in conversations that I've heard sisters saying that there's no good brothers. So when you say there's no good brothers or potential brothers to marry, I just think that they're speaking about, just having someone who are meeting some of the requirements that they are looking for. And do they have a right to have those requirements and standards? Absolutely, they do. Just as a brother would have those requirements and standards that he's looking for. And we did mention earlier that, of course, we know, statistically speaking, that more brothers marry outside of the specifically Black community and are certainly involved in more ethnic related relationships and race, marrying outside of their race. And that is not a problem because, of course, men can easily marry women, of course, and the marriage pool is greater. But for sisters who are not really interested in certain types of lifestyles, it becomes more difficult. So this conversation is just centered around that. And yes, it is part of rebuilding the Black community. As I saw in one question, someone said, hey, is this about rebuilding the Black community? Yes, it is. Because we do want to make sure that sisters consider options, right? And options go beyond the boundaries of just looking at someone in your community and you're not getting any type of potential mates. And this is not saying anything bad about brothers. It just simply means that the brothers need to prepare themselves more to be qualified in a sense, right? To be prepared for those sisters who are looking for proper mates. Is it that there is less discussion about brothers being prepared for marriage, and at the time and age that they're looking to get married is maybe even later than the sisters, or even if they're the same age, marriage is not a thought to them, right? So you have all these type of conflicting thoughts and ideas going on in the community. Nuri, would you like to take the question from the audience?
I wanted to say something
Sure.
just quickly to that, which is that like I had mentioned in the beginning that I've done coaching.
Mhm.
And I'll just say that I've spoken, I've coached a few women, African American women who have expressed concern or difficulty in getting married and finding suitable mates and things like that. And I just wanted to say that I don't know that there is actually a shortage of good Black men. I don't believe that, you know.
Mm,
I think that sometimes people complain about not being able to find a good Black man or not being able to find a good man, but
mm,
often they themselves are just entertaining the wrong type of person. It's not that
mm.
the good men aren't there,
Right.
but who are they entertaining? Like if someone has, you know, if you want to get married and this person doesn't have a job, and I mean you found that out from the very beginning, and but you keep talking to him and then you want to complain, oh, these brothers ain't got no jobs. Why are you entertaining him? There are plenty of Black men with good jobs. There are plenty of Black men who are educated, and so I just want to say that, for the women too, I just want to say that for the women too, we have to be careful that we are downing Black men or
Mhm.
downing men in general, because even sometimes people complain that Black men, or that whatever, people may fetishize people from another race, because this is a thing that happens, right? So when people talk about how do you like find someone from another race, like we also don't want to be people that are like fetishizing
Mm.
people of another race. Oh, because those African men, they know how to treat a woman, or those white men, they know how to treat a woman. Everybody's got their issues, so don't think
Right.
that just because you marry someone who's from another race, suddenly all your issues, the issues you see in the Black men or the Black community are not going to be there. More than likely, that is not true. Okay. Like Timi said, there's a lot of things. It's just men, it's just women, it's just modernity, it's just Western society, it's just like
Mhm.
the age that we're in, And so it kind of like you said, mommy, it goes back to the original discussion of marrying for the sake of Allah. Make dua, be adamant about the qualities that you're looking for, and only entertain people with those qualities. This is something that I've seen as a coach. People do all the time. You're complaining, but you are the one entertaining people who don't fit, the description of what you're looking for. And then you want to complain. It's not really their about entertaining those people so that you can then come back and say that, oh, there's all these bums or whatever. Like stop talking to them. There are plenty of good people around, right? But if you keep like zeroing in, maybe you also need to ask yourself, why am I zeroing in on, you know, the quote unquote bums, right? Or like for men, whatever's the equivalent. Why am I zeroing in on, like, why? There's something in you. There are plenty of good people out there, so have your radar on for that. And then the only other thing I would say is that, when we talk about interracial marriage and maybe people preferring to marry someone of their own race. When I was younger and I would hear about that, especially from, let's say, our Indo-Pakistani brothers and sisters, this strong preference. I mean, obviously we do know there's some issues of colorism, there's some issues of tribalism, or maybe an issue, those things are present, right? And I would hear people in the Black community complain that, people in other communities, they don't want to marry Black people, or whatever all of our assumptions are, right? However, when you get to know people, then people have different preferences for different reasons, and some of them, I'm not going to say that they're invalid. Maybe you're just only physically attracted to a certain type of person of your race. That's fine. That's totally fine, right? And that attraction is like really super high on your list. Maybe there are certain aspects of your culture that you just feel really, really, really strongly about preserving, and so therefore, you know you're Black and you went to a HBCU, and it's really important to you that you also marry a Black person who went to an HBCU because there's certain types of traditions or this or that. Like, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, you know? And I know people from different cultures, and I bring up some of our Indo-Pakistani brothers and sisters because as I got older and had, you know, really close friends who were from that community, and then I got to see, number one, what we're seeing on the outside as quote unquote racism or even quote unquote colorism. It's things are not always as they appear from the outside, right? Many times it's just like like you have to marry a cousin. This is not even about race. It's not even about tribe. Like you're marrying a cousin. You know, they're not actually trying to like it's not about race specifically necessarily. You know, it's a lot even more specific than that. Maybe because they have certain customs, as I said, in our culture, the daughter moves into the mother's house. This is how she treats the mother. This is her role in the family. These are the dishes we cook. These are the times we do it. And those things are very important to them. And they want to, you know, they want to preserve those things. And people have a right to want to preserve, whether it be in the African American culture, Caribbean culture, they, you know, in the Pakistani culture, like if that is really and truly important to a person, there's nothing wrong with that, you know. It is it is just something that you know individuals would have to decide for themselves. And I would still say that in this day and age when holding a marriage, you know, having a successful marriage is challenging, people should really think about all of their various criteria and kind of weigh their level of importance. And what comes out in the end could very well be different for different people. For some people it's going to be like, listen, it's hard enough to have a successful marriage. I need to marry someone from as similar of a background as myself because those are just not challenges that I want to take on. And that is perfectly legitimate and you know, fine, right? That's them. But for someone else who's like, listen, my hierarchy of preferences, race or culture is not high up there, and I'm open and willing to like do the work, you know, and sort of be malleable is not exactly the right word, but be flexible enough and open-minded enough to learn about this culture, you know, and figure out a way that whatever our cultural differences are, we can mesh them. And maybe both people, you know, are proud of their cultures and at the same time are not so committed to like everything in their culture like being preserved in the next generation. And I think that's fine too. I mean, again, I think as African Americans and as Americans in general, we really have an idea of what other cultures are like. You know, we think there's this cultural purity that other cultures have that we don't. And my experience, even just having close friends from different cultures, that is not true. It's just not true. Like in Qatar, the national dish is biryani. That is not Arab. That is Indian. They got it from the Indians. The Indian Empire was the dominant force here. So the idea that cultures mix and they take on things from other cultures and they add their own twist to it, that's been happening forever. So you know, cultures change, and like you don't have to be afraid of that, right? Like I think even in our own family, like mommy, you're from Guyana. Guyana, there's roti and there's also cuckoo and fufu. Like there's a mix of things, right? From different cultures that have now come together to make a new culture. You don't actually have to be afraid of that, in my opinion.
Thank you for that, for sharing. And we only have a few more minutes. We're having a hard stop at 7:30 because our sisters do have to attend to other businesses. Nuri, I'm going to throw it in your court.
Okay, so inshallah, if you have a question, please write it now so that we can read it inshallah in the next few minutes. I'm going to read a couple of the comments and the ones that are questions, then hopefully we can discuss as well. So Rashida, you said, well, that was earlier. I don't know what it really is the solution to, and why can't we find that in our Black men? I think both Makeda and Fatima agree that it's not at least for them, it's not necessarily a lacking, but that interracial marriage should be normal because you should be looking for prioritizing other things. So I'll just sort of rush through ones that you guys have already talked about. Let's see. Rashida again. I myself don't have an issue marrying outside my race, but they have to have all the qualities that I'm looking for. It's an individual choice. Garrett said, okay. I didn't read that one before I put it up. Let's see. I don't want to be disrespectful, but the panel is about healing the Black family within an Islamic context, but there are only sisters, not to point a finger, but curious what they think. So this is a 7-part series, and I think most of our panel discussions do have men. We just happen to only have women because this topic specifically is about Black women and Black Muslim women in interracial marriage. Okay, Spina Hedja said a lot of people aren't clear on what they're looking for. Other than the bare bone basics, we have to really pause and reflect on what's best for us. Farouk said, for this topic, no, we're all, alhamdulillah, we're all married. Hajj said, subhanAllah, the pool of qualified Muslim men is small, whether Black or other races. Do either of you want to speak to that? I think you already sort of disagreed with that idea, Kita. Do you want to? Or Tima?
Yeah. I'll
Okay.
say that I won't say that I agree. I'll say that I don't know that I agree with that. Because there are good, educated, serious Muslim men of various races. I don't know. I think it gets into a whole other issue about marriage. The reality is that at the end of the day, you make dua, you find someone you think is compatible. To me, I think you should have a very short list of very serious things. And once someone is compatible with that, you understand that marriage is work. Marriage is work. If people want to have a long list of very specific characteristics, yeah, of course, your pool's going to be very small. But if you are willing to prioritize things that are fundamentally important to the character of a person, and you're willing to do the work, the spiritual work, the emotional work, to support another person and to be supported by another person, to be your better self, then you can get married, inshallah. I think a lot of what is preventing people from getting married are arbitrary criteria, and really they're just not willing to put in the work in the marriage. It's not because there aren't good people, and it's not because they aren't people who, with the right love and support in a marriage, couldn't be great people. But like, people have to be committed to that. So yeah,
Right.
I don't know if I agree with that.
For the sake of time, thank you everyone for your comments. I'm just going to read the questions now. So if you have a question, then please put it here. Okay, isn't it natural for most people to want to stick to their own people as default? Fatima, what is your quick take on that?
I would say, yeah. I don't think anything anyone said here would contradict that. I think it's natural that people like those who are like them, and that intersects with racial identity, ethnicity, oftentimes. I think it's perfectly natural.
What if it is for economic growth and the preservation of our African American community? Makita.
I don't know. I don't really understand the question.
I guess the question is this idea of marrying within your race is one of the benefits for this larger picture of economic growth and preservation of African Americans?
Yeah, I mean, it could be. It very well It very well could be. So I think if that is really like a top priority for someone, then yeah, certainly would be best to, um, yeah, to marry someone within your race.
So this one is specifically for you, Fatima. How did your husband, who is Moroccan, overcome marrying overcome marrying an African Black woman with the idea of us being stereotypes in the media?
Yeah, well, I think this is okay, well, two things. I think, a lot of, I don't know if it's more Black women than Black men, but I feel like from my experience that a lot of Black women, too many, have this idea that we're seen as unattractive to a lot of other groups of people. And, I would really caution against that idea. I mean, certainly there are people who are going to have those feelings, but I think it's more untrue than true. But anyway, I would say that this is again where the topic of culture and cultures comes together, because yes, my husband is half Moroccan, half white American. He grew up in Morocco and America. So, I can't tell you, I don't think he felt like he had to overcome anything. I don't know if he was fully Moroccan, if he would feel like he had to overcome anything. But I can say that, we do have cultural sort of connection points, right? We both grew up in America. We both listened to a lot of the same music growing up. We're obviously both Muslim. We both have a similar specific understanding of Islam. We both have very similar teachers. We have similar visions. So we had a lot of things that, no, we don't intersect on race and ethnicity, but we intersect on a whole lot of other things. So, I don't think it was a big deal. I know he wasn't the first Black woman I wasn't the first Black woman that he had a crush on in his life. So it wasn't like, some new thing where he had to sort of figure it out. But again, I mean, I think that's why I was saying that, we look at race as this huge category, and there's so many other sort of more specific cultural things. And there's so many different kinds of culture. Like when I think of culture, I'm not just thinking of complexion, I'm thinking about the culture of the home. There's the type of home culture that people might have in common across different races. What kind of music do people gravitate to? There's all sorts of things. So we had a lot of connection points. They weren't ethnic connection points, but they were other connection points.
Yeah. And I guess I'll just give that same question to you, Kira, in terms of whether it was from you to him or him to you. Was there any Black from his side or white from your side stereotypes that you had to overcome? I guess that would be before even seriously talking. Like, did that exist for you at all?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I was very, you know, I was looking to get married. I was very open. I was into was gonna meet, and this person was, suggested. And his friend like basically tried to hook us up pretty much, and I was open. I found out he lived in New Hampshire. I was like, where is that? But aside for that, just kind of like, okay, my husband grew up in the woods, and that's, completely different, like kind of upbringing than me. But yeah, I just was open, I'm like, okay, I'm getting to know this person from yeah, we have a different culture, but it's funny because like Timi said, with her and her husband, we had a lot of connection points on things that really mattered, very similar understanding of Islam, similar teachers, similar interests, same thing, similar music. My husband has really great taste in music. um, lots of we just share a lot of things that are really important to me, and important to him as well. So really like a very strong intellectual connection. Um, and those are the things that matter. Yeah. I grew up in Brooklyn. He grew up in the woods of New Hampshire. Like, okay, he grew up chopping wood and things like this. So fine, we grew up differently. He's lobster and quiche and things that I never had before I met him. But now we all eat it. So alhamdulillah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
just
I
want
don't
to.
I don't think getting over.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Keita. I just want to add also because I see in some of the comments that someone was saying about, we're portrayed in the media as angry Black women, and overseas people like Black women, but to marry them is another thing. I think again that is like so not true. I think it depends on the perspective that you're looking for, the narrative that you can continue to carry with you. That said, oh, you're there's some of us who act like angry Black women. Right? Let's be real. Let's be real. But if you want to inherit that and carry that with you, then you get what you get, right? But I'm just saying, in terms of our options, we're talking about our options, right? So obviously, interracial marriages are not the solution. Polygamy is not the solution. Monogamy, for the most part, is what we have in our community, and most African American Muslims do marry African American Muslims, right? So again, we always have my thing is you have choices, right? You have choices. Do not stifle yourself. Look at your options in what is presented to you, and standards. As you get older, your standards will have to change in terms of what you're looking for, right? Because if you have a laundry list of things that you've had since you were 20 something years old, and now you're 30 something years old, and you still have that laundry list of things, I'm sorry, but life has changed, right? And your needs are going to be different. So by the time you're 40, and again, your standards have to change. Does it mean that you water down what it is you're looking for? No, you have to be more realistic in terms of what the options are. So again, we just want to be able to give you food for thought. And before you all get out of here, kindly again,
I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah, please contribute to the masjid. The information is in the chat. And again, whatever you can. $10. I usually hear the imam say $10 for your door fee or your door entrance or whatever. And they can say it better than I do. But at least, if you have to put it on a plan to contribute to the masjid, again, to continue to build and sustain that masjid and to make these discussions or similar discussions as these continue, I think it's extremely important. Go ahead, Nur.
Yeah, and I just wanted to comment, subhanAllah, I think that's a very unfortunate attitude that some in the Black community have, whether it's Black women internalizing it or Black men preserving this idea that people outside the community don't want to marry Black women. It's very sad. And I've heard it on more than one occasion in Black Muslim spaces. And it's just unfortunate. And subhanAllah, I know people, obviously, I know plenty of Black women who are married out, and that's not to promote that marrying outside of the race is better than marrying in the race, but it's to say that everyone has options, alhamdulillah, and everyone's going to marry the person they're meant to marry. That is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has destined for us, whoever we're supposed to marry. But I just think it's a very unfortunate attitude that we really have to reconsider and allow yourself to actually experience other cultures. We're not saying that you should marry out or you should explore other cultures, but rather if you're going to think about this issue at all, it should be informed, and it should be informed through experiences, and also not just your own, because any individual can have a bad experience, but also talking to other people, talking to people who have successful marriages. It's just subhanAllah. I remember another conference a couple of years ago, and we were talking about a similar issue of Black women and marriage, and discussing Black men marry out more and all of that. And during the Q&A, this it wasn't even really a question. This statement came up of, yeah, but no one else wants to marry us, and it's so heartbreaking to think that there are Black women who are walking around with that idea. It's not true, and it's just it's incredibly sad. So I just really hope that, if nothing else, here are two Black Muslim women who, again, it's not as if it's a badge of honor, but it's just to say that there are Black women who have successful marriages, within the race, outside of the race. And I really, really, I don't really know what I can say more than really rethink that attitude, because it's incredibly unfortunate.
Yeah. Can I just want to add to, just add on, say my piece. Yeah, I could totally agree with you, Nuriddeen. I think it's so ridiculous. I think both attitudes, one, that somehow Black women, that men of other races are not going to be attracted to us or don't want to marry Black women. They don't find Black women attractive. That's just ridiculous and not true. Just much in the same way that the idea that if you want a good man, you have to go outside of the Black community. That's also not true. There are good Black men. There are good Black men, right? So marrying, quote unquote, outside of your race is not something that I think someone should look to do because, well, I guess I'm going to have to go outside of my race to find a good man. No. You want to marry a good man. You make dua, you hang around, make yourself known and available to the type of man that you're looking for, and only entertain the type of man that you're looking for, and be the type of woman that type of man would want to marry. Don't fetishize, like, don't put down yourself, and don't put down Black men either. There's not. I don't, like I said, I don't know that I believe that there are just no good Black men. And I don't like when I hear people say things like that,
Right.
I don't think that it's I don't think that is true. I think, unfortunately, people entertain people that are not good for them and then make generalizations and don't even look at themselves as who attract this type of person. To question that. And then for Black women, yes, men are attracted to women. Men are attracted to women. Men of all races, they're going to be attracted to women of all races. Like, it's not, there's nothing, there's like an inferiority complex, that maybe people don't realize that they even have. But yeah, like you said, shake it off. It's not true.
Yeah.
And also, the same way how
I'm sorry.
stereotypes about us, we also need to stop believing these ridiculous blanket stereotypes about other people too.
Right. It goes both ways. It absolutely goes both ways. So when we continue to embrace negative thoughts and behaviors about ourselves and others, we can't grow. We can't grow. It's just that. And you're just going to be stuck where you are. Right. And this whole blanket statement about this one is not good or that one is not good or the Black community is that, it's ridiculous. And that's one of the things that put us in this state of feeling as though we're inferior to others, which is absolutely ridiculous. And we know that those are learned behaviors, right? Those are things that is unfortunately part of it is in our culture, but not most of us do not think that way. So in order for us to move forward, we have to continue to see ourselves in a better light and portray the things that are positive and not harp on the things that are negative. Because you can't prove what you're saying, that there's no good Black men in the community. That's ridiculous. Just as you may hear, some brothers may say, oh, these sisters just ask for too much. Well, what is too much? You not being able to sustain your household, provide for your household. Those are some of the basic things. So you have this conversation going back and forth, and no one is really dealing with the real issues of what it is they're supposed to deal with. That is responsibility, right? And accountability to ourselves first, right? To Allah, ourselves, and to each other. And that's how a relationship is built out. So we want to thank you, Nuri. Do you want to answer like one more question and then we close out?
Um, no, alhamdulillah, we can close out. I do want to let you all know, for those of you who may not have been here earlier, that my sister Makita Knight, she has a coaching business that is thepathtopresence.com. And if you sign up for her newsletter, then you'll know when she's doing a course or when she's available for coaching. She also has a planner where you can plan out your Ramadan. I think your Ramadan planner is what's out now, right, Kida? Okay,
Yeah,
so
and
where
the
you
year,
can,
the year planner is still out too.
okay, alhamdulillah. So you can plan your life around barakah, around dhikr, inshallah ta'ala. So check out both of her sites, thepathtopresence.com as well as plan-barakah.com. Unfortunately, Fatima Knight, I don't think she'll be able to end out with us, but please also take a look at her website, her two websites, fatimanight.com, where you can read her writings, as well as the Souf shop, where she sells home goods from Morocco, directly from Morocco. Alhamdulillah, I had the opportunity. We were in Morocco at the same time, and I got to drive up to the mountains with her. I didn't get to see the wool makers and all that, maybe another time, but it was quite an adventure, at least that part of it. And alhamdulillah, she and her husband went directly there to Morocco to source these materials and create rugs and pillowcases. So please check that out. Also, for my mother and I, there are different places. I'll just say if you want to look at what I have going on, then you can go to my Instagram at Nuriddeen Night. It's just my name, which is on the screen. And then for my mom, um, I know you said your email is okay, right?
Yeah, but I would also like to inform folks that you and I are authoring on some upcoming children's books, all having to do with Islam. And we will certainly let you know when it's available on Amazon. And again, these books are really, the beginning stages of getting our children familiar and loving this deen. And yeah, we'll let you know when those are ready for you to purchase as well and share with the community.
Yeah, so my mom can be reached at madonna.night@gmail.com. Again, you can reach me or follow me at Nuriddeen Night on Instagram. That is the best point of contact. Thank you all so much for being with us. It was really a great discussion. We appreciate your comments. Fatima's website is thesoufshop.com. Let me just put that up one more time. I saw the question there. Thesoufshop.com. So please do take a look. Hamdana, I have some of her pillows. I know that you, mom, have some of her pillows.
Me
So
too.
they're really,
I have
really.
one back.
Oh, you do as well? Okay, Hamdana. Shift all the way to
I'm gonna put it on the other side.
Oh, okay,
My other ones
okay.
are downstairs.
Okay, alhamdulillah. So we all have some soup shop pillowcases.
Yeah, let me make a quick correction, Nuriddeen. It's Madonna Night, no dot in the middle. Madonna Night at gmail.com.
MadonnaNight@gmail.com, at Nuriddeen Night on Instagram, FatimaNight.com, and thesoufshop.com, and then Makita Night, thepathtopresence.com, and plan-baraka.com. We're really, really grateful to you all for being a part of this discussion. Please do like the video, heart the video. We'd really appreciate it. Share it with others. Also, don't forget to donate to Masjid Muhammad via Cash App. You can go to their Cash App is $Masjid Muhammad AC. Thank you again for joining us. And inshallah ta'ala, next week we are going to be talking about polygyny and we're going to have coaches. So we're really excited about that, talking with coaches who work with people who are in polygyny and hopefully can really add some good guidance, wisdom to that conversation, inshallah ta'ala. So we hope to see you next week at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.